All right, history buffs. UPSC aspirants, especially all those tackling the GS1 modern history section.
Yeah.
You know who you are.
Welcome back.
We're back for part 2
Part 2
of our deep dive into modern Indian history.
Yeah.
Remember our mission here, making those dense, sometimes overwhelming
Right.
topics digestible,
Yeah.
and most importantly, memorable,
Of course.
especially for you all out there
Yes.
tackling those exams.
And even if you're just a history enthusiast,
That's right.
stick around.
You might learn something new.
You never know.
And hey,
Oh, and don't forget
to hit that like button and subscribe
Yeah.
for more deep dives into the fascinating world of history.
uh,
So, today
Yeah.
we are cracking open a pivotal document,
okay.
Wood's Dispatch of
Okay.
1854.
1854.
This thing
big one.
was a turning point
Yeah.
in Indian education,
It really was.
and it's often dubbed
Uh-huh.
the Magna Carta of English education in India.
Right.
Sounds impressive.
Right.
But what's the real story
Yeah.
behind this catchy title?
Mm.
What were the motivations,
Yeah.
the ripple effects,
Exactly.
and why even all these years later
Mm-hmm.
does it still matter?
That's precisely what we're here to uncover.
Okay, I'm loving this detective analogy.
Historical detectives.
Historical detectives.
Piecing together the clues.
All right, let's set the scene.
Okay.
We're in the midst of British East India Company rule,
All right.
with Lord Dalhousie as the Governor General.
Yes.
Before we even get to the dispatch itself,
Okay.
what was the state of education in India
At that time.
at that time?
Well, picture a rather fragmented landscape.
Okay.
You had traditional pathshalas and madrasas
Okay.
focused on religious and indigenous learning.
Right.
The company had established a few institutions
Mm-hmm.
promoting Western education,
Okay.
but it was limited,
Limited.
almost like a scattering of puzzle pieces,
Yeah.
not a complete picture.
So why the sudden urge for a major educational overhaul?
Mm-hmm.
What was the driving force behind this desire for change?
It was a combination of factors,
Okay.
really.
Yeah.
The British realized that to effectively govern and administer India, they needed a workforce trained in Western ideas
Right.
and systems.
Okay.
It's about control.
Creating a class of individuals who not only understood,
Right.
but could also implement
Yes.
British policies.
Exactly.
Almost like shaping minds to align
Yeah.
with the goals of the empire.
Exactly. Don't forget the cultural aspect.
Oh, right.
They saw Western education as a civilizing force,
Okay.
a way to instill their values and worldview.
Interesting.
And of course,
Like
not discount the economic motives.
Right. The economics always
Always.
into play.
A Western educated workforce
Uh-huh.
could contribute to the expanding colonial economy,
Right.
filling roles
Yeah.
that would benefit British interests.
Okay, so we have this triple whammy
Triple whammy.
of political, cult, and economic
motivation.
motivations.
Yeah.
Okay, so the scene is set.
The scene is set.
British rule,
British rule.
a fragmented education system,
Fragmented.
and this pressing need for change.
Need for change.
Enter
was
Wood's Dispatch,
Wood's Dispatch.
our so-called Magna Carta of education.
Right.
What were its core objectives?
Yeah.
The heart of this document.
At its core, the Dispatch aimed to create a system
Okay.
that would produce a class of Indians proficient in English
Okay.
and Western knowledge,
Right.
essentially serving the needs of the
Yeah.
British administration.
But wasn't there a debate raging
Oh, yeah.
at the time
Huge.
about the merits of traditional Indian education
Right.
versus Western learning?
Yeah.
That whole Orientalist, Anglicist
Yeah.
controversy.
Yeah.
How did Wood's Dispatch navigate this
Right.
intellectual tug of war?
It attempted a delicate balancing act,
Okay.
though not without its inherent contradictions. They championed English as the language of higher education
Right.
and administration,
Okay.
but acknowledged to some extent
Yeah.
the importance of vernacular languages
Okay.
for reaching the masses.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't just about imparting knowledge. It
Right.
was about shaping the very fabric of Indian society.
Trying to mold a future India that served British interests
Yes.
while grappling with the existing complexities of a diverse and culturally rich.
And culturally rich nation.
Fascinating.
Isn't it?
So let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
All right.
The specific recommendations
Great.
laid out in the dispatch.
Right.
What were some of the standout points?
Hmm.
The ones that would truly reshape the landscape
Okay.
of Indian education?
One of the most significant
Yeah.
was the recommendation to establish a Department of Public Instruction in each province.
Well,
Think of it as a centralized command center
okay.
for education,
All right.
responsible for organizing and managing schools. Yeah.
Colleges, the whole shebang.
Bringing order to that previously fragmented system that we talked about.
We were talking about that.
So what else was on their agenda?
Okay.
Did they address access to education for the general population?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They proposed a significant expansion of mass education.
Okay, so more
elementary,
middle
and high schools, especially in areas where access was limited.
Okay.
The idea was to create a wider pool of Indians who could be educated and eventually employed within the colonial system.
Interesting.
And to fund this massive undertaking,
Yeah.
they introduced the grant-in-aid system.
Now that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Break down this grant-in-aid system for us.
Right.
How did it work?
Okay.
And what was its overall impact?
Think of it as financial assistance for educational institutions.
Right.
The government could provide funds to private schools that met certain standards.
Right. Encouraging growth and expanding their reach.
Okay.
A clever way to incentivize and control the development of education, wouldn't you say?
Indeed. A subtle yet powerful way to shape the educational landscape.
Right.
But did their focus remain solely on expanding these lower levels of education? What about higher education?
Right.
Did Wood's Dispatch address that as well?
They certainly did. In fact, they envisioned grand universities. In the 3 presidency towns, Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras.
Wow.
These were to be modeled after the University of London.
Interesting.
Bringing a distinct British flavor.
Okay, so not just content, but structure, too, was being imported. Creating institutions that mirrored the British system. What a powerful way to influence the direction of intellectual thought in India.
It is.
But having these grand plans on paper is one thing.
Right.
Did they actually materialize?
Yeah, good question.
Did these universities, along with those departments of public instruction, truly take root?
They did. The years following the Dispatch saw a surge of activity as these institutions were established.
Yeah.
Universities' rose departments formed, and the machinery of the Dispatch began to turn.
It was all coming together.
It was coming together.
And it wasn't just the institutions. Enrollment in both schools and colleges saw a noticeable uptick. Particularly among the upper and middle classes.
Right.
So the intended audience was certainly being reached.
Yes.
But what about those who had been historically excluded from education? We talked earlier about the Dispatch's nod towards women's education. Did that translate into concrete action?
It did, and one shining example of this is the Bethune School.
A Bethune School.
Founded in 1849 by J.E.D. Bethune.
Okay.
It predates the Dispatch itself.
Wow.
But serves as a powerful testament to the growing momentum behind women's education.
Okay.
The Dispatch's explicit encouragement of female literacy further solidified this movement.
A remarkable instance where progressive ideas were already taking hold.
That's true.
Even before they were formally endorsed by the Dispatch.
Yeah.
It speaks to a changing social landscape, doesn't it?
It does.
But we can't forget those specialized institutions the Dispatch called for. Those dedicated to agriculture and engineering. What became of those?
Those seeds were sown as well.
Okay.
An agricultural institute was set up in Pusa, Bihar.
Okay.
And an engineering institute in Roorkee. The emphasis on practical and vocational training, as outlined in the Dispatch, began to bear fruit.
So we're seeing universities, schools, a focus on women's education, and the beginnings of technical and professional training,
a
multifaceted approach to shaping India's future workforce. It paints a picture of significant transformation in the educational landscape.
Yes.
Would you say that Wood's Dispatch achieved its intended impact? Did it fundamentally reshape Indian education?
I'd say reshape is an understatement.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The Dispatch laid the very groundwork for the system we see in India today.
That's huge.
It is.
Wow.
Its echoes can be felt in the structure, the institutions, and the very approach to education.
It's everywhere.
It is.
that continues to shape generations.
Continues to shape generations.
A truly lasting legacy.
A lasting legacy.
But with such sweeping changes,
of course,
were there any unintended consequences?
Oh, yeah.
Did everything go exactly according to plan?
As with any major historical event, the consequences, both intended and unintended, were intertwined in a complex tapestry. And that perhaps is where the real intrigue lies.
Okay, I'm all ears. Unravel this tapestry for us.
Okay.
What were some of those unintended consequences that stemmed from this ambitious endeavor to reshape Indian education?
Well, perhaps the most significant was the westernization of Indian education.
Okay, the westernization.
The emphasis on English and the adoption of Western teaching methods inevitably led to a gradual decline in traditional Indian knowledge systems.
Interesting.
While the Dispatch attempted to balance English with vernacular languages, the scales were undoubtedly tipped towards the former.
A shift in focus.
Yes.
From ancient wisdom to modern science, you could say.
You could say that.
And with that shift, the potential for a disconnect between generations, between those steeped in traditional learning and those embracing a Western worldview.
Precisely.
So while the Dispatch aimed to unify India under a common educational system, it also inadvertently sowed the seeds of division. A fascinating paradox.
Isn't it?
But we can't deny that it also opened up new opportunities for Indians, equipping them with the skills and knowledge to navigate a rapidly changing world.
A double-edged sword indeed.
A double-edged sword.
And it's this duality that makes Wood's Dispatch such a compelling subject of study.
For sure.
It wasn't simply about creating schools and universities. It was about shaping minds.
Shaping minds.
Shaping society.
Shaping society.
Shaping the very trajectory of India's future.
Which brings us back to our UPSC aspirants.
Yes.
Why is understanding Wood's Dispatch so crucial for them?
Good question.
Especially for those tackling the GS1 modern history section.
It's not just about memorizing dates and events. It's about understanding the nuances, the motivations, the intended and unintended consequences. The very fabric of this pivotal period in Indian history.
The fabric of history.
Wood's Dispatch wasn't just a document. It was a catalyst for change.
A catalyst.
A force that continues to resonate today.
A ripple effect.
A ripple effect.
That continues to shape the landscape of modern India.
Absolutely.
And speaking of its significance for the UPSC exam.
Yes.
Didn't a question related to Wood's Dispatch appear in the 2018 prelims?
Yes, it
did.
It asked about the key recommendations of the Dispatch. Okay. Testing the candidate's understanding of its core objectives and provisions. And it's precisely this kind of in-depth analysis that our deep dive aims to equip you with.
So by understanding the context, the intricacies, and the lasting impact of Wood's Dispatch, our listeners will be well prepared
to
tackle any question that comes their way.
Any question.
Whether it's on the UPSC exam or in their broader understanding of Indian history.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, this knowledge isn't just about acing an exam. It's about enriching your understanding. Of India's journey as a nation.
Of India's journey.
It's about appreciating the forces. That have shaped its past. And continue to influence its present. A journey marked by both progress and paradox, wouldn't you say?
I would.
And speaking of paradoxes. We began this episode with a rather thought-provoking question. How did this single document contribute to both the rise of Indian nationalism and the strengthening of British colonial rule?
Yes, the million-dollar question.
The million-dollar question.
And to delve into that, we'll need to shift our focus to the socio-political landscape of the time. Exploring how Wood's Dispatch, intentionally or not, set the stage for the events that would unfold in the years to come.
Sounds like we're about to enter a whole new chapter.
A whole new chapter.
In our exploration of Wood's Dispatch.
Yes.
Listeners, get ready. Things are about to get really interesting. Welcome back to the Deep Dive History Enthusiasts.
We're back.
We're in the final stretch. Of our exploration of Wood's Dispatch.
The big one.
A document that, as we've discovered, had a ripple effect. Far beyond the classroom.
That's right.
We've unpacked its goals. Its implementation, and even those fascinating unintended consequences.
These unintended consequences are always interesting.
But the big question lingers.
Yeah.
How did it contribute to both the rise of Indian nationalism and the strengthening of British colonial rule?
It's a paradox.
It is a paradox, isn't it?
It is, and that paradox is at the heart of understanding this era.
Okay.
Let's start with the rise of nationalism.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about the westernization of education?
We did.
The very act of exposing Indians to Western ideals, like democracy and individual liberty, planted the seeds of questioning British authority.
It's almost ironic, isn't it?
It is a little bit.
Like handing someone a toolkit.
A toolkit.
To dismantle the very structure they're meant to maintain.
Exactly.
By introducing those concepts, the British inadvertently gave Indians the intellectual ammunition to challenge their rule.
The ammunition. Those Enlightenment ideals.
Right.
Already shaking things up in Europe.
Yeah.
Found fertile ground.
Fertile ground?
In the minds of educated Indians.
Wow.
The Dispatch, by promoting Western thought, inadvertently fueled the very forces that would eventually seek to dismantle the empire.
So while aiming for control, they inadvertently fostered dissent.
They did.
But it wasn't just the ideas themselves.
Whoa.
It was also about the spaces created, right?
The spaces,
Universities and colleges brought together bright minds from different regions. Fostering a sense of shared identity. A pan-Indian awareness that transcended regional boundaries.
Absolutely. These institutions, designed to produce loyal administrators, became unexpected crucibles for nationalist sentiment.
Wow.
Imagine these students exposed to new ideas, debating, discussing, and forging bonds that would fuel future movements.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
The unintended consequences are fascinating, aren't they?
They really are.
And let's not forget the role of the printing press.
Oh, the printing press, of course.
The Dispatch encouraged vernacular literature and journalism, which led to the rise of nationalist newspapers and publications.
Exactly.
These became powerful tools for disseminating anti-colonial sentiment, challenging the British narrative, and mobilizing public opinion.
Yes.
So in trying to control the flow of information, they inadvertently created a platform for dissenting voices to be amplified.
Yes.
It's remarkable.
It is.
How these seemingly small details had such significant consequences.
It speaks to the unpredictable nature of history, doesn't it?
It really does.
But we have to look at the other side of the coin as well.
Okay. The other side.
Wood's Dispatch did achieve its primary objective in the short term.
Okay.
Creating a class of Indians who were fluent in English.
Okay.
And adept at Western administrative practices.
The loyal workforce.
The loyal workforce.
They envisioned those who would keep the machinery of the empire running smoothly.
Exactly. This new cadre staffed the lower rungs of the administration, freeing up British officials for higher-level positions.
Making things more efficient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It increased efficiency and allowed them to manage this vast and complex empire more effectively.
Yeah.
In a sense, the Dispatch strengthened British rule by providing the human resources needed to maintain it.
And it wasn't just about practical administration. By introducing a modern education system, the British could also claim they were civilizing India, justifying their continued presence under the guise of benevolent paternalism.
A classic colonial justification, attempting to mask the power dynamics at play. And while we can see through that lens now, it's important to remember that this narrative did hold sway among some sections of Indian society at the time. The Dispatch's impact was multifaceted, creating both collaborators and challengers.
Wow.
Weaving a complex tapestry of consequences.
It's a reminder that history is rarely black and white, isn't it?
It's never black and white.
There are shades of gray complexities and unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences.
That ripple outward, shaping the course of events.
But in ways we can't always predict.
Precisely. And that's the beauty of studying history.
It is.
Uncovering those layers, understanding those nuances.
The nuances.
And appreciating the interplay of forces.
The interplay of forces.
That have shaped the world we live in today.
Well said. We've explored the many facets of Wood's Dispatch.
We have.
But as always,
we don't want to just leave you with answers.
No, we don't.
We want to spark further exploration.
Yes.
To keep those intellectual gears turning.
Keep thinking.
So here's a final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked extensively about how Western education impacted India.
Right.
But what about the reverse?
Ooh.
How did Indian culture and knowledge shape the British who came to rule India?
A fascinating question.
A fascinating question.
We encourage you to explore this further.
Yes.
To delve into the world of cultural exchange.
Yes.
And see how those interactions influenced both sides of the equation.
Both sides.
Perhaps you can share your insights in the comments below.
And of course, if you enjoyed this deep dive into Wood's Dispatch,
yes,
don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations of history.
More deep dives.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and keep questioning the world around you.